Welcome back to a Mother's Touch podcast where this is our pour. I'm your host, sincerely, Christina Marie, and as always, thanks for being here and wanting to have a conversation with me. Today, I am really going to be touching on a subject that is not light. It's not something that's common. It's not something that we would necessarily, most people probably wouldn't want to talk about. Most people like to avoid this topic. Most people like to try to sweep it under the rug or just deal with it silently. And it's on the topic of suffering. And I can touch on this subject because this is something I've had to endure privately time and time again. And the Lord recently convicted me about that to start talking about those seasons where I was suffering silently. The seasons that I felt that I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, and I had zero control. Everything around me didn't make sense. But what did make sense is my faith in the Lord. The times that He showed Himself faithful to me when it seemed impossible. The times where I had to depend on Him time and time again. But what if we saw the times and seasons of suffering as a season to bring strength, to build our character, to build our integrity? And in these seasons, it feels like it's a time of despair. It feels like it's not something that we look forward to, right? But I guarantee you guys that the seasons of suffering, it's not going away. They're not. I'm going to be very honest with you. Whether you're in the highs or the lows, suffering will happen. And also, even if you're in the world or not in the world. But one thing for sure, whether you're over here or over here, the suffering will be there. But if you're in the world, you don't have God. And when I've learned time and time again in this season, I have Jesus on my side. I have Jesus with me in my times of sorrow. I have my Jesus with me in my times of when I feel like I can't make it. I don't know how we're going to get it to the next month. I don't know how we're going to make it to the next space. I don't know how this is going to get taken care of or how that's going to happen. But He's with me in the times of suffering. And He sees you in the times that you are suffering, even silently. And I'm going to go into a passage that's actually pretty known. And I want to take it from a different angle because this is something that the Lord has shown me because it focuses not so much on the suffering itself, but right back to Him and who He is. And that's what I want to express to you. That's what I want to pour into you in this time, because when you're in that season of suffering, allow Him to pour into you. Allow Him to touch your hearts and get into that secret place. I guarantee you the suffering season will lead you to the secret place. I know there's a difference between isolation and the secret place, but the secret place needs to become your comfort space in the sense that He needs to be there with you, not by yourself. That's the difference. When you're in a season of isolation, you and this hyper-independent mentality, no, that's not where He is calling you to be. He is calling you to Him in the secret place. Because that's where He can hold you. That's where He can keep you, where He can sustain you. Because that's what my Bible says, that He keeps me, that He sustains me, and He makes me strong when I am weak. So the passage is the woman with the issue of blood. I'm going to go in the Gospel of Luke, and it's in the 8th chapter, we're going to start at verse 40. And in this angle, Luke, he kind of gives an explanation of the daughter of Jairus and how he comes to Jesus to heal his daughter, right? But in this passage, we get that in the forefront. But in the after aspect of that is the woman with the issue of blood. And we hear this story, this dynamic story, how she gets healed of bleeding for 12 years, right? She is constantly bleeding. She is suffering constantly. 12 years. It is non-stop suffering. And at that point, on top of that, people are coming at her. They are labeling her. and they're calling her to the outcast, to the outside of the regular village in the neighborhood. She is now looking at as an outsider. And I just want to express to you guys that this woman, though she gets healed, what if that is actually not the miracle all by itself? What if the miracle is actually something else? What if it's her coming out of her suffering? Her suffering of bleeding for 12 years. Her suffering of being an outcast for 12 years. She probably was going crazy by herself in isolation, like, what is wrong with me? How come this thing can't be taken away with me like it did, like I've heard? Because she heard the stories. How else would she know to come to Jesus? She's hearing the stories of so many other people, so many other miracles being taken place, and she's probably thinking, when is it going to be my turn? When is it going to be my turn? And that's where I want to encourage you today. In your time of suffering, instead of thinking, when is it going to be my turn? Let's fix our focus to Jesus. Let's fix our eyes to Jesus, because he's the only one that can heal you and sustain you. But let's take it a deep step further, okay? In verse 43, it says, and a woman having a hemorrhage for 12 years, who had spent all her living on physicians, but could not be healed by anyone, came behind him, Jesus, and touched the fringe of his garment. And immediately her hemorrhage dried up. Jesus said, who touched me? When everyone denied it, Peter and those who were with him said, Master, the crowds are pressing against you, and you say, who touched me? But Jesus said, someone touched me, for I perceive that the power has gone out from me. Verse 47, when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him. And she declared to him before all of the people why she had touched him and how she has been healed immediately. And look what Jesus says. And he says to her, daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. This is so beautiful to me, and I might get a little emotional, because this is now so much more for a mother's touch. I resonate with this so much because it's literally a mother's touching the hem of his garment that has gotten me this far. In my times of suffering, the years and years of suffering that I've had to do silently and privately, it's taken all these time and all these years to finally get to this point where I have to give him my all, my faith, my endurance, the pressing through, the pushing through the people, pushing through the naysayers, pushing through what people have labeled me as, pushing through the battles in my own mind, the battles within myself. That I'm not worthy enough. I'm not qualified enough. I can't go into the village. I can't declare the things of the Lord. But she had to press through. And her posture, this whole passage is so beautiful to me because her posture is lowly, but she still has enough faith to reach out. She's not looking to be up here to be seen. She's coming low to him at his feet. And she doesn't even want to be seen. She doesn't even want to be heard. She's just like, God, if I just touch the hem of his garment. And that's been the season for me, honestly. I'm doing this thing by faith. I may look crazy to some people, but that's okay. Because I have a mustard seed faith to just continue to press through. Because that's my posture, just to be at his feet and to touch the hem of his garment. Because if that's all I ever get, that's all I'll ever need. That's all I'll ever need to continue to press on, to do the things that he has assigned me to do. Because if you look at it in verse 47, when the woman saw that she was not hidden, when she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him. She declared before all of the people why she had touched him and how she had been healed immediately. So the perspective and the angle I'm actually trying to get at is, what if the miracle was her coming out of hiding? What if the miracle was her pressing through just to touch Jesus' garment to get out of her season of suffering, season of silent suffering, time and time again, the mental battles that she had to press through, to get silencing the noise of the people and the labels that was placed on her? What if that was the miracle itself? And because she was able to endure, look at Jesus. Look what he does. I love this so much. I love it so much. Jesus says to her, "Daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." There's 3 things I want to pinpoint here. The first one is he calls her by her first name, and it's not the name that you think. He calls her daughter, the thing that she came into this world as, the thing that he's declared from the moment that she was in her mother's womb. Knowing the suffering that she might lie ahead, but he calls her daughter. And I feel prompted to encourage you that you are his daughter. And you get to come to him humbly, yet boldly to him. Stop thinking you have to work at it. Stop thinking that you have to have X, Y, and Z in place. Stop thinking that you have to have everything else. No. Just come to him as a daughter, because we serve a God who gets to serve as a heavenly Father to us. Because that's just how good he is. And because of this, he says, "Daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well," right? We get so focused on that, and this is a great and glorious thing that Jesus does. But the beauty in this is he calls her daughter, her first name, and he says, "Be of good cheer." He sees her. He sees her for who she is. He sees her for what he's called her to be, his daughter. And I believe that there was probably a restoration moment, because she's been in such a season of exile. She's been such a season of isolation that she can't focus on what she's originally called, which is his daughter. And I believe some of you have that same mentality. You get so caught up on being the mother, the wife, the entrepreneur, the business this, the business that, or the stay-at-home, whatever it is that you do. But before all that, you are his daughter, and he sees you. And because of this, I love this, because he not just affirms her, but he confirms in her to go in peace. Because imagine the things that she's now had to face, that she's no longer in isolation. She's no longer the one that has to be on the outside of the cities, in the caves, in the mount. Like, no. She gets to now commune with the people that called her unclean, the people who looked at her sideways, that said she was dirty, that she was filthy. Like, why is she here? What is she doing here? And he affirms and confirms her and says, "Go in peace." And I guarantee you, she probably becomes one of the greatest evangelists through her testimony of stepping out of her suffering, to having enough faith to step out of the labels that man put on her. That's the kind of faith I need. That's the kind of faith that I'm encouraging you to have. Start stepping out in faith, but not to man, not to what man wants you to be, not to the labels that man are trying to put on you, try to put you in this box or in this platform or in this corner. No. It's unto Jesus. And then he will say, "Go in peace," and he will tell you what to do. Because that comes with communion with him, relationship unto him. And if you're in a season where you're struggling in that, where you're struggling on a season to have that relationship with the Lord like that, I just pray that he will touch you right where you are. That he will touch you right now in your bedroom, and when you're driving, or when you're washing dishes, taking care of the babies, cooking dinner. He sees you. I serve a God that's El Roy. He's a God who sees. And that's exactly what he did right here in this passage. He sees her. He calls her by her first name. And then he restores her. He restores the thing that she was suffering from for so long. And I honestly believe, I'm putting this out there by faith, I'm going to be very vulnerable. 12 years ago, I don't think this is by accident, 12 years ago, in 2012, when I was in Bible college, it was the first time that I actually felt called by the Lord. It's the first time that I felt I wanted to do something more than myself. And I had changed my major. I was doing the general studies, and I changed my major to missions. And it was in that time, in that season in 2012, where I started to learn and be like, wow, this makes sense. Makes sense why I want to do this and want to do that. And in that time and in that season, when I thought it was going to be this glorious, work, that's actually when the suffering started, amongst other things. But it's those times in those seasons where I felt the closest with the Lord. Even though I was struggling silently, even though I was suffering, he still was with me. Even when I tried to push him away, or I felt the shame and I felt the guilt that was happening in my life, he was near. And once I allowed him into those spaces, those broken spaces of me, those brutal and broken spaces, he kept me. He sustained me. And it took 12 years, guys, where I actually feel like I'm walking in a season of wholeness. And I think it's an ongoing thing. I don't think it's a time thing. I don't think time heals. I think it matters of a posture of your heart and your walk with the Lord. Because he will walk with you. He will be with you through it all. And what a better way to be suffering with him. And my Bible says that will happen if you are a believer. And I would rather take that than suffering in the world that leads straight to death. I would rather have that with eternal life in heaven with him, because I got to serve him and he was with me through every season. In the journey of the past 12 years, it's had its highs and it's had its lows. And even in this transition season of even a mother's touch, I'm going to share with you guys that he gave me this vision of this through this passage. He's like, Christina, what if that woman with the issue of blood is you? And you're the one who has to come to me so that I may restore you, that I may heal you, but also give you enough courage and boldness to come out of suffering for so many years. What if he's just wanting you to step out of your suffering? And that's what I've had to learn in this season. And that's why it's been such a joy. However, with that, it makes me feel uncomfortable still. But I guarantee you that's probably how she felt. She probably felt like, oh my gosh, I don't deserve, to be seen, let alone touched by him. But he saw her. And I believe that's what he's done to me and what he will even do for you in this season. He sees you, guys. I just feel that so strongly, that he sees you. He sees you right now, wherever you're at. Whether it's a season of suffering or it's a season of the mountain, but he sees you and he's with you. And so with that, now that we're going into the new year, you're going to see a lot of this kind of more language, because I want to use this as an example of where I want to be that woman who had enough courage and enough faith to press through the voices, to press through the labels that man put on her, and have enough faith to just go up to Jesus with the posture down at his feet. Literally, the lowliness of her heart posture, the lowliness of where she had to reach out to him. It wasn't his head. It wasn't, hey, look at me. I've been suffering all these years. Look at me. No. She crawled and went forward, step by step, trying not to be seen, trying not to be heard. And she just reaches out and touches the hem of his garment. And that's where he turns and he sees her. He loves her. He affirms her. And then he commands her to go in peace. And for some of y'all, you may need that affirmation as well, to go in peace. And maybe it's just simply by sharing your story, simply sharing your testimony in the simplest way, or hey, maybe we can have a conversation on the pod. That's okay too. Reach out to me. I'm open to it. But here's the thing. We have to remind ourselves that it's not just about you and me, but about what he's done for us. And through this, I've learned that even though he healed her, he healed her, had her come out of suffering. He commands her to go in peace. And the people around them were in awe. I think that is such a beautiful testament in itself. Because she might be battling within, but the people around her were in awe. They were speechless. All the things that they said to her, all the things that they probably labeled on her, silent. They were silent. They had nothing else to say. Because you want to know why? Jesus saw her for who she is, and he called her. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter who's in your corner and who's not. As long as you have Jesus seeing you and assigning you to do what you know to do, that's all that matters, because it's obedience. Obedience to him. Obedience to what he is assigning you to do. That's what matters. Not what other people have said about you or think that they can do for you. And I pray in the next season, sorry guys, let me take some water. I pray in this next season that you will have increased discernment on who's actually supposed to be in your community, who's supposed to be in your corner, who's supposed to be in your circle, because not everybody is supposed to be there. And I pray that when you pray for discernment, that you will also have the right discernment to see who you need to cut off. The people that you need to cut off, and that might hurt, that might feel uncomfortable, that might not be your cup of tea, but that's okay, because you need to press forward with Jesus. You need to press on with him. You need to get on the lowly stature of humility, not pride, and just touch him. Touch the hem of his garment and come at him at his feet and say, Lord, here I am. And if that's all you ever get, that's all you'll ever need. I'm a testament to this. I am a true testament. I always say I have, it's not always the crazy faith. Sometimes it's the mustard seed faith. And that's what I had with a mother's touch. I had mustard seed faith to do that. So I hope this encouraged you. I'm trying to keep it short today because with a solo episode, but I pray that this really touched your heart because this touched mine. Jesus touched my heart. And I pray that as you continue to go on in your season of suffering, that he will be with you and that he will strengthen you in this season. But you got to reach out to him. You got to touch the hem of his garment so it could continue to flow and be within you, that boldness to go in peace. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode at a Mother's Touch podcast, where this is our pour. Until next time.